between you and lunch, so I'll try to be not as boring as possible. But I think until now we have been data geek, can we say it, about GTFS and so on and so forth. I think that this project, also for what you have done for the bootcamp, will be very much more interesting in this sense. The project is called Meridian, and I want to start by showing you this picture, which is the A22, the highway, also known as Autostrada del Brennero. And why I'm showing it to you? What you see, actually, it's highway. What does a highway have? Driving lane, yes. However, there is much more on a highway. Think about exits, infrastructure, parking spots, the availability, charging stations, service outside the highway, and so on and so forth. Why am I talking about this? Because there is a common word, there is a common concept behind each of these words, and it is that they can be digitized, they can be digital. And in 2025, digital means data, and I can assure you that in the software world, data means value, and value is money. What we're doing with this project is moving from the simple strip of asphalt, from the driving lanes that everyone only thinks about, to the digital strip. Each of the things I've mentioned before have become digital. The Meridian project, in fact, is begun in 2022, is still ongoing now, and the idea is to create a European digital highway corridor, bridging and bringing together different services and infrastructure from different countries and cross-border areas. To be more specific, the idea is to bring efficiency and innovation throughout the whole Scandinavian, Mediterranean, European corridor. If this is the project, now we can get to what does A22, Autostrada del Brennero, and OpenMove does. A22 is actually the owner, through concession, of the digital strip I've been talking in the beginning. They are the digital enabler, and they want to increase the value of the infrastructure. How? Through data, which is value, which is money. What did we do as OpenMove? Our role was actually twofold. First, we had to collect mobility data, not only from Autostrada del Brennero, so from the highway concessionaires, but also from different transport services operating in the surrounding areas. The second thing was to create a digital layer, what's called a multimodal digital mobility data space, that could provide both open data and open service. Looking at the overall solution architect that we will compose throughout these 10 minutes, the first step has been to collect data sources from third parties. Why I've said that maybe this sounds more familiar to you. You all retrieved the data from Open Data Hub. It was not just you during the bootcamp, but it was also OpenMove throughout the last year. You can see that the third parties data include the UAV, University of Venice, which provided some information on sound barriers, the Automobile Club Italy that provides information on road accidents. The Noi Tech Park is actually one of our main and major contributors in terms of data we have been retrieved throughout the project. You can see traffic data, data on parking lots, on car sharing services, on in-charging stations, and so on. But there are also data of public transport operators, such as Trentino Trasporti and STA, which operates in the autonomous province of Bolzano. But we are also taking data from Emilia-Romagna. Now, while there are two different colors, because the list is not complete in the sense that it cannot be ruled out in the future that many more stakeholders will include their data in the project. As you can see, the Autostrada del Brennero itself providing us more information on the toll gates, and the province of Trento through webcams. This is the bigger version, actually, of what you have been doing. You know that you need to collect some data, but you also need to let them talk with each other. What happens when you work with third parties' data? You need to understand, first, does the data exist? Is something that actually is there. Then you need to understand who can give me this data, who's the data provider. So you need to talk, or in the case of Open Data Hub, just to register and retrieve. But you also need to understand what's the data. Is it static? Is it real time? If it is static, what is the time frame? If it is real time, how much time do I have to retrieve the data? How many times can I call the endpoint, if we want to be more specific? And then you need to understand if there is a common format, because the problem when dealing not with just one source in which you have that's the format, because it's just it, you can work around it. When you have multiple data, multiple providers, multiple formats, you need to let them speak the common language. The common language means if the data already follows a format, imagine datex2, it's for traffic. If it's already in that format, easy, you don't need to do anything else. However, sometimes the data is not in a common format and you need to work on it, you need to understand the metadata, you need to craft it in order to make everything work within your infrastructure. Why within your infrastructure? Because then you need to build the system. The first part is the road and traffic manager, which actually takes the data. You have seen all the table in the previous slide. You had all the data. The input manager takes them. It takes as an input the data. And it talks with the second component, which is Nucleus. You have the data. It has been standardized. And Nucleus does two things. It puts them within our database, and it makes them available to third parties through an integration layer, which is actually just an API call. But this is what's behind the system. You have, once again, data source. The input manager calls it. But the data driver needs to assess them, modularize them, and make them available through the endpoints. But there are several endpoints. You can see there are the static data, that I've seen the infrastructure, the driving lane, the exit, where parking slots are located, and so on and so forth. And then there are all the real-time data on something that changes, the availability of the parking spots. How many spots are there available? You've seen it. It changes. You need to track it. Same things for the sharing vehicles. Is the vehicle already taken or not? And behind, you also need to make the whole system work. And as you can see, there is a part of Nucleus which has a trip planner that we have seen is the routing engine that makes people go from point A to point B, and the database, one for static data. They don't change. You can keep them. It's once every while. And a cache, because real-time data changes, so you need to call them every time frame that you decide. The last part, we have defined the data. We arrange them. We make them available. What do we do? How can we make available? Through the integration layer. Available to whom? To what? Through how? Actually, there are two portals that will be developed. One is called road and traffic, and the second one is a management dashboard. Road and traffic will be available for end user, while the management dashboard is for the stakeholders, people involved in the project. However, as we have been working on endpoints and API, this data will also be available to third parties and everyone else who wants to work on this data and include them within their personal project, for example. When speaking about the road and traffic portal, it's actually a web app that will be available to view all the data I've been mentioning before. It will be possible to search travel solution through a trip planner containing both static and real-time data. It uses two parallel routing engines. It's just not OpenTripPlanner, because OpenTripPlanner works best with public transport data. However, open source routing machine works best with the private vehicle. So imagine you need to take the car to go to one of the exits and then take a bus. You need to merge two different routing engines. There is also custom search for travel solution, because maybe you'll take the private car, but the private car and public transport, or you want to use sharing vehicles as a park and ride, and so on. And the sorting, which is based on some predefined KPIs defined with relevant stakeholders. The management dashboard, instead, is used for the data management, but it also provides additional features related to the governance of the overall digital layer which has been created. And it has a role-based access control as a key feature, but it also allows the control and monitoring of API usage and the data visualization and the business intelligence features. We have been doing a lot of work, the data, the system to manage the data. We make the data available. There are the front ends, OK. And now, the fact is that the project has been thought with an eye to the future. It was just not about, okay, we make everything digital and that's it. The fact is that thanks to this project, this digital layer presents several interesting future evolution in terms of needs of user, market, and regulators. And maybe among these, like the toll booths for intermodal hubs is what I've been talking about as the park and ride solution. So imagine in the future, you can use the car, but then go to an exit and take some other vehicles. But maybe the most important one is that you are fully supporting autonomous vehicles. You give access to the infrastructure through digital connection to the vehicle itself. It has all the needed information to move throughout the Autostrada del Brennero. And, as a matter of fact, for the stakeholders, it would also be a way through which exploit a data marketplace. So using all the data collected in a certain way to give them to third parties. Thank you very much, and I think we can say that it's lunchtime.